New Buddhaware Dhamma Talks. Geoff Hunt presents a talk on some aspect of the Buddha's teaching.
The Four Noble Truths are, first of all, that we human beings are insatiable. We're never really satisfied. We're always in a state of want. Now, this obviously has something to do with the fact that we are conscious. We suffer a lot because of the nature of consciousness, so we can dwell on the past and we can think about the future. So the Buddha is really referring to the kind of suffering which is unique to sentient or conscious beings. He's talking about our peculiar form of suffering. So he's not talking about pain, physical pain, because we know that all sorts of creatures suffer pain, but human beings don't just suffer pain, they suffer the thought of pain. Isn't that true? When you start thinking about pain or potential pain, you can start worrying about that. And the thought of the pain could be even worse than the pain. Maybe that pain will never come, but we think about it, so we suffer twice sometimes. We suffer from the pain, we suffer from the thought of the pain. So that's the first noble truth. And he often says that's the only thing he's really interested in, is getting to the roots of human unhappiness and what the cause is, and therefore whether the cause has got a remedy of some sort. And basically his story is that we misunderstand our reality. That's the really core root thing. But the second noble truth is that cause of our dissatisfaction, our anxiety, call it what you will, is this state of want, this craving, wanting more, wanting things to stay as they are, not wanting things to change, clinging, hanging on to what cannot be hung on to, clinging to the unclingable. If there's a word like unclingable, I'm not sure how to spell it. Then there's the third noble truth, which is that it is possible to undo that process of clinging. And fourth, this is the way to do it, which is then, mindfulness, concentration, and so on. Okay. So in a way, he's trying to palliate or attenuate human suffering by asking us to make an adjustment in the way we perceive things, in the way we perceive ourselves and perceive our reality and our lives. Even our understanding of death, he thinks, is wrong. Human beings are conscious of their own death. Other creatures are not. So there's another source of suffering. So let's look at the second noble truth a bit, and that's that somehow it's a lot of it's to do with clinging. Clinging, craving, attaching, and the opposite of clinging is pushing away, rejecting, disliking, not wanting, having an aversion for. That causes, of course, we know that causes a lot of trouble, because we cut up the world into nice little bits and pieces, and then there are pieces we like and the pieces we don't like. We want the world to be the way we want it to be, and we want it to stay that way, and it's not going to. So it's very fundamental that if things are impermanent, but we want them to stay the same and they won't be, then there's going to be trouble, isn't there? So clinging is a central idea in the Buddha's teaching, because he thinks clinging is at the root of our anxiety, our unhappiness, our restlessness, our trying to make paradise on earth and making a mess of it. All of that is caused by clinging to what is unclingable. So we need to loosen up a bit, we need to lighten up. And so the path we're following through meditation is precisely a process of lightening up, if you like. So, clinging, what is that? Well, there are many ways of approaching this, because it really is an absolutely critical idea. Well, I think we all know what physical clinging is. So, if I'm falling off a cliff and I'm hanging onto the edge, I'm clinging out of fear, that's clinging. It's all physical clinging, isn't it? He's not talking so much about physical clinging, although it might come into it in a way, I suppose. He's talking really about human beings cling in a special way. We cling through our thoughts, through our concepts, and which is unavoidable up to a point. But because we don't have very much awareness of what we're doing or how that works, turns into a lot of difficulty for us, and we don't really see that. Clinging, say, mentally, clinging emotionally, clinging through our ideologies, clinging to differences. All of this is mental, and it's easy for us to objectify the clinging so that we take it to be a reality. So, for example, take this idea of possession, of something being mine. Right, so if I say that recorder is mine, when you look into that, it's a bit peculiar, really, because where is this mineness? Where is it? Is it in the recorder? Is it something distinctive about the recorder? Or what is it that makes it mine? Well, there is no answer to that except that it's in my mind. And since we share that idea, you would agree with me, presumably, that it's mine. But the mindness doesn't actually exist anywhere. You know, we are very good at this. In fact, the human world rotates around mind, around possession, around property. You know, this is mine and it's not yours. But if it's mine and it's not yours, there's a distinction, isn't it? Mine doesn't work if it isn't excluding others. So it's excluding. Okay? This now applies to everything. Clothes are mine, money is mine, house is mine, car is mine. My spouse is mine, my children are mine. But it gets a bit metaphysical because my body is mine. This is my body. I can do what I like with my body. You hear people saying this sort of thing when they get worked up about certain ideologies. Or you have no right to take away a piece of my body without my consent. It's my body. But we never stop and think for a moment, what is this my? How does something what is it that has the body? Because if I say it is my body, it suggests there are two things. There's the body and there's the thing that has the body. Now, the moment you see that, then it starts to become a bit mysterious. Because what is it that has the body? We're going to now invent something else. So we'll say it's a soul, or it's a spirit. But then we can't say very much about those either. See, another way to go is to say that actually mind just doesn't exist. There is no mind. But it's a form of clinging. That's what the Buddha would say. It's a form of clinging. And clinging always causes troubles, sooner or later. So when you open the newspaper and you see that two neighbours have fought over the exact position of the fence between their two gardens, and they get very angry over this 1 inch, where the fence should be. And in one case, a few years ago, one shot the other man, shot him dead, over 1 inch of land. Later on, he felt so ashamed of himself that they then shot himself. Now, when you think that only human beings can, in their minds, conjure up this sort of grotesque universe, we know that other creatures have territorial behavior, but they don't have a concept of mind. Because human beings have lived without a concept of mind. I mean, certain Amazonian Indians, and in the past there have been certain communities that didn't think in terms of mind. They had no concept of possession, but they had very simple societies. So they might say, well, yeah, okay, this is the spear that I'm using, but it's not. It doesn't. I'm not going to feel that somehow it's an extension of me. And this is where the possession develops. When something in my mind becomes an extension of me, now we are clinging. I've now extended the concept of me, myself, into this other thing. It's like, this car is mine. When I get in the car and I drive, I now feel, this is me. Somehow, the car has become an extension of my body. So I admire the guy with the nice car. Because now I don't see him, I see the car. Or I don't see her, I see the car. So the car, because like my body has grown, like fingernails have grown. Are the fingernails mine? I can cut them off, they drop off, don't they? The hair mine, I cut that off and throw it away, is that mine? What about your urine? Is that mine? Would you feel bad if somebody took it away? What about your feces? But if it were your blood, now you get quite obsessive about that. Right? But not your feces. What's going on there? If blood craving, feces rejected, don't want that. So you can have it if you like. But it's come from inside my body, right? My body. Which that's an interesting one. That's where the Buddha's going with this. What is my body? To say my body. So he'll say, one of the forms of clinging, the first aggregate of clinging is your own body. That I take myself to be my body. And he wants us to challenge that, really. I mean, if I put a label on it and it's got my name on it, is it the label that makes it mine? Is that where the mindness lies? It lies in the label that says Geoff Hunt on it? Well, it'd be tempting to think so, wouldn't it? But the label, what if I took off the label and stuck it on something else? Would that make it mine? So if I took the label off the recorder and stuck it on Chris's forehead, would that make Chris mine? I don't think so. So it's not the label, is it? The label is just an indication, right? But it's obviously nothing to do with the label as such. So what is it that makes something mine? Now this is a central aspect of the Buddha's analysis of the sources of our anxiety. Because look, once something is mine, it generates all kinds of other issues, right? Am I going to lose it? Is someone going to take it from me? Is it going to deteriorate? Do I have to replace it? Should I insure it? Is it big enough or somebody else got a bigger one? You have to clean it, you have to look after it. It might get stolen. Theft, by the way, only makes sense in relation to possession and property. Where there is no property or possession, there is no theft. So in a sense you might say theft has no objective existence. It exists in our minds in relation to property or possession, which also exists in our minds. Right? This is our common sense, which we take for granted. But the Buddha is asking us not to take things for granted. He's asking us to look more deeply, because otherwise you will never get to the bottom of what our anxiety is about. Because we are generating our own anxiety by these forms of clinging. Yes, possession, property. Just look at the world and how it works, and you'll see that most of it has to do with property. What is that saying about 9/10 of the law is property? Possession, yeah. It's true, isn't it? Money in banks all belongs to somebody. And look at the big buildings that go up because of that. Look at the roads that are built. Look how the world is carved up into nations. You belong in this nation, and I belong in that nation. And we talk about the national interest and then the national bank and all of this. It's all property, isn't it? But it doesn't exist anywhere. It's all in our minds. But as long as we agree to it and we have an understanding about it, it'll function that way. In other words, as the Buddha says, we are generating our own reality. But we don't see that. And we don't see that generating our own reality brings with it a price or a cost. Because once there's property, there's theft. Once there's theft, there's a protection of your property. Then you have rights. Then you have to build prisons for people that steal. And then you have to put guards in there to look at to make sure they don't break out. Right? And then they have to be paid a salary. And everything gets more and more and more complicated because of what we have in our minds. So the Buddha is saying, well, let's unwind this a bit. So let's unwind by letting go of a lot of things that we take for granted. Now, he's not saying we should all run around naked with no belongings of any sort, but he's saying become aware of it, and for us as lay people, learn to lighten up about it and to see what is important in life. Of course, if you were a monk or a nun, you would not have any property. There's a point in that. That is a way of saying to you, now you've become a monk, you are not going to cling to anything in this world. When I went into a retreat at the Myoshinji in Kyoto, I went wearing what looked like a judo outfit. It's called samurai. But when I arrived at the door with this guy was a Rinzai priest who took me there was a man standing at the door, and he turned to me and said, hand over everything, which I was quite reluctant to do because I felt I was losing my identity. If anything happened to me, nobody would know who I was. I'd obviously be a foreigner because I was the only foreigner out of about 100 people. But I had to hand over my passport, my money, even my toothbrush. Right? I was left with one piece of cloth, a bowl and a piece of cloth. That was it. And the priest that was with me, he said, he could see that I was looking a bit nervous about this. His English wasn't all that good, but far better than my Japanese. He said, "No clinging." I got it immediately. And once I handed over everything, I just had this two-piece samurai and the bowl and a piece of cloth. I felt so light and so free. Nobody was going to steal a piece of cloth from me or a bowl, right? And we were all the same, because everybody had the same stuff. But what am I getting at? I'm saying that, look, if you look at the Buddha's teaching taken to its limit, to where he says, if you really want to be awakened, right, become a monk or a nun, because then we take that no clinging seriously. Now you have got no property. According to the rules, you're not allowed to handle money. You're not allowed not allowed to have any private property of your own. But we are lay people, so what are we expected to do? What we are expected to do is to go halfway for life. Go, just be aware of this. We'd hold the monks up as our ideal, but we know that we are lay people. We know that we are entangled with our families and work and our society and all the expectations it has of us. We know that we've probably all got a credit card or something in our pocket and some money. However, we can have greater awareness of how we could cling in a harmful way to these things. We could make a readjustment in our priorities, in our understanding of what is important in life. Because it does make a difference. Because we all lose things or have things taken away from us. Then you will see whether someone is clinging or not. When something is taken away from you, or when you lose it, how are you going to behave? It's like somebody's torn off your arm, or are you going to think, oh well, it's sad, but well, never mind. There's a difference, isn't there? There is a difference. We're in a kind of compromised position, but the Buddha does think, there's plenty of intimations that he did think that if you follow the path long enough, even as a lay person, you could become fully awakened. It might just take you a bit longer and make it a bit more difficult for yourself because you're still entangled in this world. But the counter-argument is that we've got more opportunities to learn than the monk, because we are challenged every day, and those challenges are our teachers. Because you're going to have plenty of opportunity to be irritated, angry, disappointed, all the rest of it, right? Whereas the monk is not leading that kind of life, so he's not challenged very often. You see what I mean? So in some ways there might be some upside to being a lay person.
New Buddha Way lets go of East and West and starts afresh in the life we have now. For more information, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.